From the mind of the stranger, I bring you Bollywood Man. The film industry in Mumbai was always a dream of Faraj Singh. He grew up watching old Bollywood movies on the TV with his mom. It was the only way the two of them could bond. Faraj was always a distant child. The pictures mesmerized him in a way nothing else could. His gleeful smile carried over to adulthood when he finally decided to pursue a film career of his own. His budget was small, but he figured that with enough creativity, he could scrape by. He'd always wanted to create his own blockbuster, though the resources at his disposal weren't exactly up to those standards yet. He began filming his next project on a dirt mound a few miles out from the city. He was alone, as per usual, as he set up the camera in its correct position. His other films, written, acted, and directed all by himself, were complete flops in the view of the public. This one was going to be his comeback. That's why everything had to be perfect, including the angle of the camera. As he adjusted the lens, Faraj noticed a faint purple glare reflecting off of the glass. As he turned his head, he could see a small rock sticking out of the dirt. Faraj decided to walk closer to see what it could be. Before long, his arm began to reach out to touch the purple stone. As his finger made contact, a bolt of electricity shot through his body, making him numb. Faraj fell to the ground, unable to even feel the ground beneath him. Then, in a flash, the numbness faded and Faraj could move freely again. Only when he picked himself off of the ground, he noticed something was different. A man exited his bedroom in search of his morning coffee. He lumbered towards his kitchen just down the hall where a coffee maker resided. As the dark liquid poured out of the machine, its scent wafted into the man's nostrils. He picked up his drink and sipped from it with a delightful grin. He made his way over to the tabletop when a massive explosion ignited through the wall. The man fell to the ground, coughing and spilling the contents of his mug. He looks up with wood chippings in his hair to see a man floating in the middle of his living room. "Hello," the figure said. The man stood up and backed against the adjacent wall. "Hello, sir. Can I help you with anything?" the man said. "Yes, I think you might be able to. You're Shatura, correct?" the figure said. "Yes, that's my name, sir," Shatura said. "I've heard you're a director just like me. Is it alright if you could help me achieve my dream?" the figure said. "Your dream? What the hell does that mean?" Shatura said. The figure pointed to the far end of the room where a finely polished XA11 camcorder leaned up against the wall. "You're going to be my cameraman. I want to make a movie that will dazzle billions," the figure says. "Sir, I don't think I'd be the right person for that," Shatura said. "Nonsense. You're perfect for the role. You are a talented filmmaker after all," the filmmaker said, cutting off Shatura. I guess I wouldn't exactly say that," Shatura said. "Maybe some cash will help you make your decision. How's about we head to the bank and make a withdrawal?" the figure said. Shatura's ears piped up. "How much are you willing to pay?" Shatura said. "Whatever amount you want," the figure said. Now Shatura was interested. "Okay, but I do have to ask, what are you?" Shatura said. "My name is Faraj Singh, but you can call me Bollywood Man." The outside of the bank was filled with people. Faraj and Shatura could see a large group of customers passing through the rounded doorframe. "Are you ready to go in?" Shatura said. "Not yet. I'm waiting on one other person," Faraj said. "Who?" Shatura said. "Her," Faraj said. He pointed across the street to a young woman at the intersection. She was wearing a turquoise sari with bright pink lipstick that seemed to glow in the sun. As she approached them, a loud clacking sound could be heard coming from her shoes. They were also turquoise and looked to be designed specifically for dancing. "Oh, I see we have another person joining us," the woman said. "Hi, it's nice to meet you. Are you with Faraj?" Shatura said. "Yes, he told me he needed a dancer for some of his scenes," she said. "What's your name?" Shatura said. "Rui. And you?" she said. I'm filming his scenes apparently," Shatura said. "Alright, are you guys ready to get your money?" Faraj said. "Of course! Lead the way," Rui said. "Shatura, be sure to film this," Faraj said. "Why?" Shatura said. "It's important," Faraj said. Shatura obliged, hoisting the camera over his shoulder and pointing it at Faraj. "It's rolling," Shatura said. With that, Faraj shot through the front doors of the bank. Debris began crumbling down onto the sidewalk as the foundation gave in. Before long, the entire front of the building had collapsed, crushing multiple cars directly in front of it. Shatura and Rui stood frozen as Faraj burst out of the rubble with 2 large bags of money. "I have your money. We can now officially begin production," Faraj said. Shatura and Rui looked at each other in dismay. They did not say a word to each other, though their eyes told enough. Police sirens started blaring in the distance. Faraj looked down the road where 3 cop cars began to swerve onto the block. Once they pulled up, 2 police officers got out of the front cruiser and aimed their pistols at Faraj. "Put the money down," one of the officers said. Faraj descended back to the ground. He then put the money down and casually walked over to the officers. "I said back up," the officer said. Before they could react, Faraj flew forward, sending the police cruiser flying across the street and into the adjacent building. Faraj then proceeded to grab the officer's leg and flailed their body up into the sky past the skyscrapers. The other officers shot at Faraj, only for the bullets to bounce off his skin. He grabbed another officer's arm and threw him against the car, caving it in completely. Shatura, still holding up the camera, watched from behind a lamppost. Rui, on the other hand, was not with Shatura. She was instead rushing towards Faraj as he continued to throw around the remaining officers. "That wouldn't work with the scene," Rui said. Faraj stopped and looked at Rui. "How so?" Faraj said. "You told me you wanted to play a hero. If you're trying to look like a hero, it won't work this way. It would be better if you didn't kill those officers, as it would paint you in a bad light for the audience," Rui said. Faraj dropped the officer, clenched in his hand, and sent him plummeting to the pavement. "That's a good point. Good call, Rui," Faraj said. It looks like you got enough footage here. Why don't we move on to the next scene?" Rui said. Reluctantly, Faraj agreed and decided to fly Rui and Shatura to the new filming location. The next scene took place on a busy highway which also resided in the city. Faraj set down Rui and Shatura off the side of the road so they wouldn't get hit. He then proceeds to fly back into the sky. "What is he doing?" Shatura said. "I think he's observing the scene," Rui said. "How did you know what to do with the bank? I still can't believe he did that." "I just said whatever would make him stop killing those people. It's clear to me that this man is completely devoid of what he's doing," Rui said. "So what do we do now?" Shatura said. "I don't know what he has planned, but if it looks anything like what we saw back there, we have to do something. What that may be, I'm not sure yet," Rui said. Up above, Faraj continued to gaze upon his surroundings. Rush hour was fast approaching as more and more vehicles started piling up the highway. Once the road was full, Faraj pointed to Shatura for him to start filming. He turned on the camera as scene 2 was about to commence. Faraj gently touched down onto the concrete and began to walk briskly towards oncoming traffic. He saw a large 18-wheeler truck in the distance coming straight for him. Instead of moving out of the way, Faraj just kept going. Soon, the truck was upon him, and instead of crushing the man, the entire front of the truck obliterated instantly. As the vehicle came to a halting stop, Faraj just kept walking as if he had never seen it. Soon, cars followed as many had to swerve out of the way to avoid hitting him. The ones that did were sent tumbling down the highway at an alarming speed. Soon enough, chaos ensued as many pedestrians stopped, got out of their cars, and ran in the opposite direction. Rui looked over to Shatura, who was shivering from head to toe. He suddenly dropped the camera and started running with the people. "Hey, where are you going?" Rui said, as she chased after him. She managed to grab hold of his arm and yanked him back. "Get off of me! I can't handle this, I have to go," Shatura said. "You can't! You don't know what he'll do if you stop," Rui said. "Is something wrong with the camera?" Faraj said. Shatura and Rui looked up at him, flying through the air. He looked down at them expressionless, as if they weren't there at all. "Hold on, I can take care of it," Shatura whispered to Rui. "Yes, the camera broke. I guess we can't shoot the scene today," Shatura said. Faraj continued to stare at them for a few moments. His smile creeped even wider as his eyes bulged through his dark shaders. He shot through the air, leaving a gust of wind that toppled trees and shook the dirt. He then continued to fly in every direction so fast it formed giant white lines in the sky. Faraj finally stopped in the same position he had left from. He was holding an exact replica of the camera Chatura was just holding. "I found another one," Faraj said. The moment those words left his lips, over 20 buildings came crumbling to the ground all around the highway. Faraj was as giddy as a child receiving a new toy. Rui was right. That man was completely devoid of what was happening around him. Chatura gazed upon him with a distressed expression. This man could topple buildings without even a scratch. Worse yet was the knowledge that Faraj would do it over and over and over again if it meant making a good scene. Rui and Chatura sat on a hill overlooking the demolished highway. The police knew they were there, yet they did nothing. Not a single finger was set on either of them at that moment. It seemed that the police feared for their lives. They knew what Faraj would do if they meddled in his affairs. In fact, Faraj was out currently fighting the military, as they were called in just moments ago to stop him. It did not work. Faraj simply placed more stolen cameras in their correct position and began the scourge. As the chaos ensued all around them, Rui looked over at Chatura in anger. "Why did you run? You knew what he'd do," Rui said. I don't know, I got scared. I've never seen something like this before," Chatura said. "Well, neither have I, but I'd rather keep my composure than do something so stupid," Rui said. "Well, what do you expect me to do? I'm not a director. Pressure gets to me," Chatura said. Those words floated in the air for a moment. "Did you just say you aren't a director?" Rui said. Chatura looked down between his knees to the dirt ground beyond them. "No. The films I show are not mine. They're usually stolen from smaller filmmakers like Faraj," Chatura said. "You've been stealing films from filmmakers? How could you do that to them?" Rui said. "Well, it's not like anyone would believe them. I have the better say since I'm the better-known director," Chatura said. "Director of what? They aren't yours," Rui said. "Does this really matter now? There's a man slaughtering soldiers. He's going to tear the whole city apart," Chatura said. "It matters because I thought that you'd be able to help me. I don't make films. I'm just doing my best to keep everyone alive," Rui said. "And look how that's going," Chatura said, gesturing to Faraj in the distance, continuing to kill soldiers. In anger, Rui got up and walked away. Chatura continued to sit there on the hill, watching embers spark fire into the grass down below. "Alright, Rui, now is your time to shine," Faraj said. Rui stared at the house in front of them. It was an old estate with large glass panes showing the inside. Its roof was flat, with its corners leaning out at each end. "What exactly is my job?" Rui said. "You are going to be my dancer for the final scene. Are you ready to get this finished?" Faraj said. "I suppose so," Rui said. "Excellent, we'll head into the ballroom and get started," Faraj said. Faraj then burst through the window. Suddenly, the residents of the home started running frantically outside and down the street. Chatura looked into the home with the looming feeling that something bad was about to happen. Faraj excitedly floated just outside of the doorway, smiling happily. "They are gone. We can now go in," Faraj said. Rui and Chatura nervously walked into the estate, unaware of what might come next. They walked into the ballroom where a large glass ceiling laid overhead. In the middle of the ceiling was a circle with even smaller circles within that. There was a pattern of different shapes in each circle, accompanied by the colors yellow, orange, and blue. Faraj ushered them inside and told Rui to start dancing. As she did, Chatura booted up the camera and started recording again. As Rui danced under the circular artwork on the ceiling, sirens could be heard coming from outside. Faraj looked out the window to see an expansive line of cop cars, speeding in the direction of the house. What followed were multiple trucks and military vehicles, all swiftly surrounding the building. It looked like they went on for miles. One of the armored vehicles stopped in front of the rest as a man wearing a black general's outfit and beret got out and stepped forward. The driver of the vehicle got out and handed a microphone to the man. He turned it on and started his speech. "This is General Gaurav. I have come to have you arrested for your crimes. Come out peacefully or you will come with us by force," the man said. Faraj, through the window, smiled happily as he asked Rui to keep dancing. He then turned on a radio he had brought with him and started playing music. As the song picked up, Rui and Chatura noticed that Faraj was growing even more excited. Faraj suddenly began another onslaught. He broke through the wall and pierced through the armored vehicle the general had just resided in. Military personnel aimed their rifles into the sky as Faraj shot upward, trying to fly back down for another attack. He hit the earth hard, leaving a massive crater where he landed. It decimated countless cars and vehicles that were nearby. The music kept building as Faraj continued to destroy anyone in his way. At the rate he was going, it was clear that everyone outside of that house was going to die. Rui looked outside and saw what was happening. She stopped dancing and rushed to the radio. After pressing the power button, the music shut off. Rui ran towards the front doors and emerged to the outside. "Stop," Rui said. As Faraj held an officer in his hand, he turned to look at Rui. "Is there something wrong with the scene?" Faraj said. Rui stopped and pondered for a moment. "What is the plot of your story exactly?" Rui said. Faraj widened his eyes. He dropped the now dead soldier. What did you say?" Faraj said. "Your story doesn't make sense. What were you trying to accomplish with this?" Rui said. I don't know," Faraj said as he lowered to the ground. He fell to his knees on the concrete, staring downward with a blank expression. "What the hell is wrong with him?" Chatura said. "He doesn't know what to do. He seems to have been so focused on shooting this film, he never got around to giving it an actual plot." Rui said. General Gaurav and his men surrounded Faraj and put him in handcuffs. Then, though Faraj was not powerless, he did not resist as he was still in a trance. Another armored truck pulled up as they began to loading Faraj into the back. They drove off down the street with Faraj in tow. A few hours later, Faraj was safely contained within a cell in the deepest recesses of a maximum security prison. They could not understand why he didn't just escape. Perhaps he was waiting for an idea to come to him. No one knew. Both Rui and Chatura were pardoned for their involvement on account of them being more of hostages than assailants. Chatura ended up quitting his film career and decided to become a local songwriter. It's said that his habit of stealing from others carried over to songs as well. Rui went on to become her own director, after being strangely inspired by the whole ordeal. She still danced on occasion, however doing so reminded her of the time she spent watching Faraj kill innocent people. And when those thoughts started rummaging in her head, she couldn't help but wonder, was Bollywood Man planning to make a sequel?